If you're ready, we can get started. Hello and welcome to episode 24 of Great Things with Great Tech, the podcast highlighting companies doing great things with great technology. My name is Anthony Spiteri, and in this episode, we're talking to Brad Bastow, Chief Operating Officer at AUCloud. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Thanks, Anthony. Great to be here.
Excellent. So, Brad, just before we get into AUCloud and talking about a different type of service provider, one that's directly focused on government services, I just want to give the show a plug as usual. So, if you love great things with great tech and you would like to feature on future episodes, you can click on the link in the show notes or go to launch.gtwgt.com and register your interest. And just a reminder, all episodes of GTWGT are available on the YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed, please click on the subscribe link below. And also on the podcast. So all the platforms, Google, Apple, Spotify, all hosted and distributed by Anchor.fm. That'll keep you up to date with all future and past episodes. So with that, Brad, let's talk about AUCloud. Firstly, let's dig into the company history, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you guys do specifically. But the AUCloud was co-founded by Phil Dawson, who actually was based in the UK and actually co-founded UKCloud, which I did a bit of research and have done really well in the UK with regards to being the market leader for providing government cloud services in the UK. That was founded in 2011 and in 2016 was named the fastest growing private technology company, in the UK, which is really, really cool. Just explain though, there's no real connection today apart from Phil, starting and coming into Australia, starting AUCloud, but just explain that history and the initial founding and the relationship with UKCloud.
Yeah, okay. Phil actually, even before UKCloud was into data centers in the UK. So Phil and a couple of partners started up ARC data centers in the UK, which was sort of built on the side of old nuclear bunkers. Oh, okay. And the ARC centers grew into the government's preference for data center locations in the UK, and then Phil started mulling around what multi-tenancy and cloud should look like, and then they started UKCloud in the ARC data centers. Okay. So as you said, that business was quite successful, and as things evolved, Phil started. There was a lot of technology tourism to UKCloud because they were successful and people wanted to see what they did and how they did it. So Phil started thinking about, he liked startups, he likes doing new things. So he started evaluating sort of the international market, particularly the Five Eyes countries, and settled on Australia and looked at the market, did some investigation, and then in 2016 came over to Australia and started talking to ASD at the time, and other government agencies about, if we were to build something similar to UKCloud in Australia, what would that look like? What would best practice be for that sort of cloud provision?
Okay, because obviously, dedicated hosting providers or service providers to government, organisations are rare. And obviously it worked pretty well in the UK. And so that was brought out. So I can see, why it was attractive because even ourselves, when I worked in my previous role, we went through all the certifications, and we'll touch on IRAP and all the protected statuses and whatnot a little bit later on. But I know firsthand the difficulty in actually achieving these standards and having to work with these entities. You have to kind of achieve a certain level of security, certification, and it's not easy. So I think the fact that there was a proven way to do this in the UK, he saw the opportunity to kind of, get in to an addressable market that, wasn't really serviced locally in Australia. So I can completely see that. But then, so 2016, he came through. And then in 2018, basically AUCloud started. So the company's only 3 years old, which I find remarkable, actually, given the success that you guys have had. So what happened in that 2016 and 2018 period, and let's explain the lead up to the start of AUCloud in 2018.
Okay, when Phil came, or when Phil decided that Australia was a viable market, there was initially it was to be an offshoot of UKCloud, but then in talking to ACSC and other government agencies, it's quite apparent that AUCloud should be a sovereign entity. So we should be a completely Australian company, paying tax in Australia, all that sort of thing.
Okay, yeah.
So Phil started Sovereign Cloud Holdings, which Sovereign Cloud Australia is part of, and then sought investment to build up that capability and start defining what the company would look like and raise capital for the first build. And that first build was commenced probably about February 2018 in Canberra data centres in Fyshwick in Canberra.
Okay.
And for that, from February to August, when the first platform was finished, we all worked out of a loading bay at Canberra data centres in Fyshwick. And you can imagine that in Canberra winter, it was bloody freezing.
Yeah. Canberra is a very cold place for those that are listening to this and don't know about Canberra.
And then once we built the first platform, we got that IRAP accredited to protected in August 2018. After that, we were live. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe we'll touch on the IRAP because I think it's interesting that from scratch it's probably easier to build something with the certification in mind rather than retrofit it. And maybe we'll touch on it a little bit later on. But your own background yourself, so you were in Prime Minister and Cabinet as a CTO, so that's quite a cool position as well before jumping across. So maybe give a little bit of background into yourself and how you've ended up, being the COO of AUCloud as well.
Yeah, okay. I guess quickly, just the way I got into IT was through a sort of 5-year stint with the Navy in electronic warfare. I did that up in Darwin in the NT. Decided, IT was to be my career, so I left the Navy, started a computer science degree at Northern Territory Uni. Cool. Probably about 18 months into that, I applied for a job with the Defence Signals Directorate. Got a position there as a telecommunications analyst. Then did a sea change, went to Tassie, ran a business down there for a while, finished my degree, and then joined the graduate program in Canberra. Did a number of stints with different agencies, eventually running, quite large IT teams, looking after 3,000 physical servers, 10,000 desktops, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But during that period, AWS started in Australia, so there were 2 guys there. I led probably the largest deployment into AWS in the Southern Hemisphere, and one of the first large ones. Was really interested in private cloud as well, so built a big Hyper-V environment in parallel to that, and then was brought into Prime Minister and Cabinet to essentially drive cloud adoption across government agencies.
Yeah, I mean, I know that government area is very big on leveraging public cloud as a directive. And interestingly enough, you mentioned Hyper-V. So I also have kind of come to realize that Hyper-V is quite significant, and Microsoft in general in that government sector as well, right? So yeah, not that you see less VMware or whatever, but it seems that Hyper-V and Office products, Dynamics, that sort of thing, it's all pretty prevalent in that space. So that's an interesting side note. That's cool. So let's move into what AUCloud offers as for services. So obviously you're targeting these government agencies, but what services do you guys offer from your data centers?
So our focus as a cloud provider, and we referred to Hyper-V then, but still in Canberra, 80% of internally hosted workloads are on VMware.
Yeah.
So our target is to bring those locally hosted VMware workloads into a cloud. What AUCloud focuses on is sovereignty and security. So different from the hyperscalers, the way we built our cloud was with all of the security controls in place from the ground up. So we designed those in. The hyperscalers, for good or bad, they service everybody. If you want protected level certification within those clouds, there's lots of additional controls and cost you have to add to that sort of protected cloud provision. So the objective was to build that from scratch, and that's what we did. So the sort of services we offer traditional IaaS services, compute, storage,
Yeah.
backup, DR.
Mhm.
We're morphing into things like, large scale VDI provision, workspace one, that sort of thing. But essentially, it's just the base IaaS.
Yeah, so it's all standard sort of from a service provider perspective, but you're basically heavily focused on the compliancy and the security, which is why you're servicing this
Yeah.
market. So you guys have got a VMware cloud platform. I'm getting, you guys are running Cloud Director. Is that what you guys are running, or how do you kind of do your infrastructure with VMware Cloud Director? So that's cool there. And you guys, have you got your own portal and provisioning system?
Yes, we have. At the very onset, there are certain things vCloud Director does, very well, but there are certain things it doesn't do well.
Yeah.
So we spent a long time building our own user access, user management. There's a lot of things you can do from our portal, but the really important thing is about billing. So we do, up to the minute billing that's displayed within the portal for all of our customers. As we've got an application development team in Brisbane that's about 10 strong. They spend a lot of time developing that portal and all the services that underpin that portal, including an externally available API gateway.
Okay.
Where you can use Terraform providers to,
so you got your own Terraform
infrastructure,
provider,
for example. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Or just to correct, exposing all the vCloud Director APIs.
Yeah, okay.
But you can also
people can leverage Terraform to do the stuff and whatnot. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's a really good way to do it, because I think especially at sort of the targeted levels that you're going at with government, there'd be a lot of that automation thirst there as well. So that would be an advantage for you guys in terms of being able to have your platform automated by your customers and partners as well. So with just quickly on vCloud Director as well. So you mentioned that obviously, you built the portal because VCD had some limitations, but I mean, at the moment, do you expose the vCloud Director portal as well in parallel and as well as your own portal itself? Is it kind of a mix, or is it purely driven through your own portal?
No, well, simply it's use two-factor authentication to get to our portal. You've got the portal services that are exposed by AUCloud within that, but if you want to manage your virtual infrastructure, you go to another tab and you log on and you get passed through to vCloud Director. So you see the normal AUCloud skin vCloud Director interface.
Yeah, okay, standard like that. Yeah, because I mean, some providers, decide to tap into the VCD APIs holistically and kind of have that exposed through their portal directly. But I think that was more the case when VCD had a weaker UI experience, obviously. But you guys, 2018, just trying to think, that was about when they started to really ramp up development of the UI and add the extensibility into that. So yeah, you guys had.
It was just before.
Yeah.
It was just before that move to HTML5. So once it reached that, HTML5 parity, it was quite good.
Yeah, because a lot of providers obviously spend time trying to sort of work around that and do their own thing, which obviously takes up cycles in terms of dev, right? So if you guys have the power of it, but still add your own spin into it in terms of provisioning and procurement, that's the way to go. Just with the DR, because obviously my background, I know that DR is fairly big, and especially in the government space where the compliancy is significant. So what sort of DR services do you guys offer?
So for but for on-prem to cloud, Veeam is our provider for that sort of data replication, disaster recovery sort of provision. But because cloud to cloud DR was only introduced in version 11, which is quite recent, we use vCloud availability as well. So we can do cloud to cloud or even on-prem to cloud migration and DR.
Yeah, that's a good product. I mean, I actually was using the first iteration of that even before I started at the current company at Veeam. And in fact, I was only having this conversation yesterday that I think that any provider worth their salt effectively wants to run a subset of technologies and platforms and let the customers decide, which one is best. So that becomes a customer-driven requirement as opposed to, providers dictating what platform to use. So to have an array of options is actually the way to go. And I would never begrudge any provider for doing that, right? Especially with a vSphere, platform basically backing it and vCloud Director, you want to just have options. And just quickly, I've been asking this question a lot lately. Where do you see the state of DR as a service? I mean, backup as a service in terms of, someone offsite repository or just shifting a cloud-based backup, that's kind of done and people understand the value in that. Where do you see DR as a service today though? Because I've had some interesting conversations around that.
DR as a service, cloud DR as a service is an absolute must. I think the government doesn't know it needs. Coming from a government background, things like backup and DR are not performed well. You rarely, you can look at the Australian National Audit Office reports that they do regularly about investigating whether a government agency is compliant with the Essential 8 or particularly the Essential 8. So it's well known that government doesn't do that well. So I think there should be a big push and there's a big market there for government agencies to do, well-managed disaster recovery to the cloud.
Yeah,
particularly in that sort of hybrid way.
Yeah, so maybe the government is the sector that might lead the more mass adoption of it, right? Because I still think people understand backup and the reason for it, but I don't quite grasp the concept of categorizing certain workloads depending on the compliancy and having them actually as a standby replica in some other location to have, very low, restore time objectives based on, and even low RPOs and whatnot. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
What we do find, some of our, just to finish that one off, Anthony, we do find with some of our bigger clients, even if they're just, wholly AUCloud hosted, they'll still DR some of their services across to Eastern Creek, for example. Maybe not everything, but their crown jewels, they'll certainly move across to the other DC via Veeam or whatever.
Interesting. That's the way to go. So it is happening, which is cool. Let's talk about, actually, before we get into the specifics of the regulatory stuff and some of the cool stuff that you do from a security point of view, what do you guys use from a technology point of view? I know that you're pretty heavy in Cisco, so maybe just explain that relationship a little bit and why you've chosen Cisco, for, I think, from when I see the majority of your hardware.
Yep. When we did our first, initial bill of materials in 2018, that was predominantly Cisco. But as we started to ramp up, we did investigate the market. We looked at all the usual providers, and I think we spent 3 to 4 months, looking at whether it was Dell or whatever else it was at the time. But what's important to us is that technology partner trust. And Phil had a really good relationship with Cisco from UKCloud.
Yep.
And essentially with any technology provider that we use, they're so important to us. We want to be able to, you can log calls through the usual way, but if we have a whole bunch of government clients out because of the piece of kit or a software update, we want to be able to get to the senior executive and let them know what the issue is, so that we have that trust and partnership with Cisco. So even though we evaluated other stuff, I think it was clear in our mind that Cisco was going to be the partner of choice for our network. So we use Cisco ACI for network.
Yeah.
The usual blade chassis and infrastructure for compute provision. But interestingly, we also use some of their S3260 storage devices, so the large scale storage devices.
They're pretty big. They're for our workhorses, right?
Yeah, right. So we use that for our object storage through Cloudian.
Okay, yeah.
And that, but
okay, so you got and you guys.
Extremely important.
I didn't know that you use Cloudian. So Cloudian is your object storage, and which is obviously you've gone ahead and said, we know that people want to consume stuff with object storage. In terms of sovereignty and whatnot, they can't really go to the public clouds for whatever reason. So, you guys have built that because of that reason. That's cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the compliancy, and let's talk about IRAP, because previous life I went through some IRAP pain, trying to sort of go through that. And it's interesting that like we mentioned before, you guys had the advantage of starting fresh and building to that spec. And obviously it had been done before in the UK to a certain extent. So, and it's definitely better than trying to retrofit an IRAP certification into an existing mature, data center that had been built in a garage, that was, effectively just a science project that became a hosting company. And then it's like, if we want to attract these customers, now we've got to put all this process in place. And it was nightmarish. But I think for you guys, it's so critical. So maybe number one, just explain what IRAP is and why it's important. And then that protected level that you guys have and why that is actually very important as well.
So the IRAP program within Australian government is used to ascertain whether a provider meets essentially two key documents. That's the Protective Security Policy Framework, which deals with physical security, personal security, a whole bunch of other stuff, and the ISM, which is the Information Security Manual. So that has a whole bunch of controls about how you do your comms, how you do your admin, how you do your backup, how you do a whole, for AUCloud, I think it was close to 1,000 controls we had to meet that protected level certification. So you have different levels of certification throughout the ISM and different levels of controls, ranging from official all the way up to top secret.
Yeah.
So what an IRAP assessor does is evaluates, does like a first pass and second pass. First pass is just looking at your documentation and stuff like that. And then a second pass is, looking at how you implement your controls, what your admin's like, all that sort of stuff, a finer grain look at how you do things.
Yeah.
And once that process is complete, that's when you get, essentially a certificate stating that you meet those IRAP requirements.
Yeah, and just it's all coming back to me in a painful way now with the controls and all that kind of stuff. So, and to get the level of protected, I'm just trying to think back. Does that mean that end to end, you guys have to be certified to a certain extent, but then also your customers and your tenants have to be as well, pretty much up to standard as well? Is that at that level? Because I do remember that at some point it was both ourselves having to get to a certain level plus the customer to reach a certain level. Is that still the case, or have I got that mixed up?
So, no, you're right there. But the way it usually works is, AUCloud is assessed to the protected level. So if we have a channel partner or a customer, they deploy their application within AUCloud, that's sitting on a protected platform. But the channel partner, for example, their application hasn't been assessed to meet the protected level requirements. So, just because you put an application into AUCloud, that doesn't mean your internal governance meets IRAP assessment.
Right. Okay.
So there's two levels that you have to do. So what AUCloud is doing now that's unique is providing a method where a channel partner who's deployed a SaaS app on AUCloud, for example, can get that IRAP certification. So we provide a documentation set and make it easy for that particular channel partner to achieve protected level certification. Yeah. So then it's end-to-end certification.
I get it. Yeah. So you guys basically have it set at that level, which then means that when a customer or tenant comes to you and then they put their own application, they only have to really do from their part up. And then obviously they know that you guys have got that from the sort of application or platform stack down. So yeah, I get it, which makes it very attractive for customers, right? So what level, obviously, what level are you trying to get to? Because obviously in all levels of government, there's top secret, there's this huge secrecy around certain departments. So what's your guys' aim to sort of attract certain, I guess we'd call it class of customers?
Yeah, okay. Protected certainly our main market, and protected for a number of reasons, because whilst our official and protected environments are sort of completely separate, they're very similar in a lot of ways. In fact, our lower official environment has been assessed to the protected level.
Yeah.
But the way you access protected and official is different. So you can have protected, for example, we have geofencing around that. You need to achieve some sort of exemption to get external access to that. But what AUCloud is aiming at is we want to do all security classifications.
Okay.
But what that means for us is, a completely new build.
I was going to say, does it mean, it must mean that you've got to kind of silo these builds, right? Because you can't obviously mix them together.
Yeah, if you're looking at, even data center rack space, it's a completely different, data center hall that you have to put your kit in to meet top secret.
Okay.
So, I think it's a completely new build with completely different control.
Yeah, and I think I've put two and two together to maybe think about, we'll talk about the ASX listing a bit later on to end with, but I kind of almost see why that has been done. If you're looking to do that, you've got to sort of get capital together to build a new data center and that sort of thing. So that's interesting. Let's quickly go. So in terms of what you do with when your customers on board, you've got this thing called the Community Rules Information Security Policy, or CRISP. And all your partners and customers using your environments must comply with that. So just explain that a little bit.
Yeah, okay. Well, what you can't do with AUCloud is provide us the credit card and then you get services. So any customer or channel partner or government agency as well that wants to use AUCloud services has to sign this Community Rules Information Security Policy. And essentially, in a nutshell, it's not complex. It's a document stating that you understand the requirements of the ISM and the PSPF. So it's essentially a way of protecting all customers within AUCloud, as you have to operate in a secure and compliant manner as a customer of AUCloud. So you're not, essentially lowering the security standards of the environment because you don't know how to securely meet the ISM or PSPF.
Which is also addressing the market that you guys are locked into, right? In terms of that, there's a very specific customer that wants to host with you guys. In terms of the monitoring, so you guys probably do more advanced monitoring and managed services of your tenancies than most. So you've got a security operations center as opposed to a network operations center. So it's a SOC instead of a NOC. Is that something that is a differentiating factor for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of the technologies that Phil bought from the UK. And it's our very close partner, E2E Assure, which is a company that runs out of Farnborough in the UK. And what Rob Domain, who founded that company, built was essentially a cyber threat management platform that's built for analysts. And this platform in the UK protects the Home Office, GCHQ, National Air Traffic Control, all those sorts of things. So a very well-used platform. So when we brought that to Australia, what we did was we built that around AUCloud. So it's an essential core service to AUCloud. So whilst we'd never monitor what happens within a tenancy, that's got nothing to do with us. Any traffic going into or out of that tenancy, we monitor. So we can do things, like proactively. If a new tenant spins up, and left a UDP port open, we'll see that immediately. We'll notify the CISO and say, that we've detected, this anomaly. Can you please correct it? So that sits around everything that we do, all of AUCloud desktops, every single piece of ICT kit feeds into Cumulo, which is the dashboard and analyst platform that protects all services within AUCloud. So we've got a Zone 4 SOC in the building that's manned 24 hours a day. That's got some extremely bright security analysts sitting in it.
Yeah, I was going to say about the people that man that. So I'm guessing it's a room with lots of cool panels and bright flashing lights and maps and all that kind of stuff. It's a proper knock room, effectively old school, and it's 24/7 on rotation.
Yes.
Very cool. So how many employees do you guys have at the moment?
So I think we're up to 45
as
of today, but we've got a whole series of recruitment going on as well. So not a massive company by any means.
No, but I mean, obviously, you guys are, and you've got your developers sitting in Brisbane. And they're an important. You mentioned, did you say you had about 8 developers up in Brisbane, or?
Correct.
Yes, 8 developers. So that's roughly what 1/5 of your workforce is developers, which shows, the dedication to basically that portal that we talked about earlier. It's such a critical part of what you guys do.
And it's
go ahead.
It's the area that we want to grow the most because we're only going to achieve efficiency by automating everything we do, even within the infrastructure space. So we've got a DevOps team that form part of that application development team as well.
Yeah, okay, cool.
And they'll become larger and larger, as we automate more within the infrastructure.
Okay, so on that, so what's, obviously you've got some pretty, like we talked about, standard sort of offerings for a service provider. What are you guys thinking about with, cloud native platforms, Kubernetes and containers? Is that on the future roadmap as well? And it must be said as well that you guys do backup for Office 365 as well. So you're backing up, SaaS-based tech within your tenancies. But where does that future for you guys live with regards to innovation and service offerings around that cloud native world?
Yeah, okay. That's something that's very topical. So, with the upgrade to VCD 10.2, sort of in the next couple of weeks, we want to expose Tanzu Basic to our customers through VCD. So that's sort of the first iteration. But we're sort of talking to Red Hat about deploying OpenShift to get that more enterprise level Kubernetes management platform. So yeah, it's I think by the end of the year we'll have a really good story about containerization within AUCloud, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, and I think that, to be fair, if you sort of get something up that's tangible by the end of the year, you're probably ahead of the curve anyway in terms of other providers, right? I mean, it's just a bit of an unknown at the moment, and it's very driven by your own customer requirements. But in government, from the outside looking in, government's kind of like a two-speed thing to me, and I kind of see it as them being very slow to move, a lot of red tape, very sort of old school. However, I can also see that they want to kind of live on the edge with regards to some sort of, more application transformation, modernization, and that is where the Kubernetes and the containers and the cloud natives are going to come into play. So have you got customers today that have come to you and said, hey, we need to look at this because we are going down the path of a refactoring program for one of our applications, as an example?
We don't see a lot of that from government agencies, and your observation there is completely accurate. So you'll have, the massive service providers like ATL and Services Australia, they're definitely into, and have been for a while, Kubernetes and containerization. But the majority of government agencies aren't there yet. To be honest, the majority of government agencies are, just understanding cloud and are starting to move to cloud.
Yeah.
So that sort of native cloud application development isn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
But it's definitely around the horizon.
Yeah, I think, like I said, laying the groundwork for that when it becomes more the norm is the right choice for sure. So let's finish off by talking about something that doesn't happen very often in the service provider space in this country, at least too often, is the listing on the ASX, right? So I think it was, forget whether it was November-ish last year that you guys listed. When did you guys list on the ASX?
December 14.
December 14. So, you guys got there, you obviously saw, and based on what we talked about before, I kind of get the position to go into a publicly listing situation is to be able to generate, capital to fund projects like that, top secret. Is that kind of the reasoning behind it? Or was there something else?
No, you're pretty spot on there. Our objective is to build, what we call AUCloud X, which will tackle the higher security classifications.
Yeah.
And also the reason that you capital raising is to, increase sales force, increase the ability to, enhance our infrastructure provision. So there's lots we want to do in GPU as a service and high performance compute and that sort of thing. So,
cool.
That capital raising was essential to increase our quiver of services to Australian government.
Yeah, and it totally, I guess, from the other point of view, it completely exposes everything from the point of view of financials and everything to your potential customers and government. So no one's hiding anything, right? And I think that's important as well, because
No.
Yeah, if government agencies are going to put their trust in you, it's got to be end to end. So I think that's another point with that. Just to finish off, I want to ask a couple of questions that I ask all the guys I get on. So in terms of partnership, what makes a great partner for you in terms of technology partner?
What makes a great partner for AUCloud is a partner that's invested. And I mean investment in a number of areas. I definitely don't just mean money. I mean time, resources, understanding who we are. So we have, like you can imagine, we get approaches from all over the market, but people that come in to see me who don't even understand that AUCloud can't use SaaS services hosted in the US. They're going to look at our infrastructure because that's not our market. That's not what we can do.
Yeah.
So we have great partners in Cisco, Pure, Cloudian, Veeam, and VMware. For infrastructure and our major software pieces, but all of these companies are invested. We do stacks of joint marketing with Veeam. We're just about to go into some really cool stuff with VMware on Horizon DaaS and Workspace ONE. And also, things like the great support we get from companies like Cloudian. Every time we post something on LinkedIn, Michael So, the CEO, is reposting it or making a comment. So those sort of relationships are, essential to how AUCloud operates.
A two-way approach to it, right? Like scratch our back, we'll scratch.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Also a care towards your, if the vendor succeeds through you, then you succeed, and vice versa, I think. So you're on the head.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's wrap it up. Just before we do, is there anything else that you wanted to sort of shout out to about AUCloud? Anything that you wanted to point anyone to specifically? Any shout outs?
Off the top of my head, just keep an eye on AUCloud. We're doing great things with Gov. We've got an extensive channel partner network, and I think our channel partners are really, really happy. At the moment, we've got 100% retention rate. Yep. Nobody's left us yet, and there are great things just around the corner. So keep an eye on us.
Good stuff. Now, looking forward to seeing how you guys progress. I think, like I said, you're in the right spot, the right niche. You've grown quickly from a very young company, but obviously making lots of waves, especially in that Canberra area in government. So I'll put a lot of the information links back to your site and whatnot on the show notes. So you can find me at Anthony Spiteri on Twitter, at GTWGT Podcast, or gtwgt.com. And again, a reminder, on the YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button. And with that, I want to thank Brad and I want to thank AUCloud, and we'll see you next time on Great Things with Great Tech.